This is the Aftermarket Radio Network.
Welcome, everyone, to yet another episode of Diagnosing the Aftermarket A to Z. I'm Matt Fonslow, and in the face of overwhelming odds, I'm left with only one option. I'm going to have to science the shit out of this. That and more after a word from our sponsor, NAPA Autotech Training. So, are you looking for the right training provider that offers cutting-edge courses to hone your automotive skills? Well, let NAPA Autotech take you to the next level. Go to napaautotech.com for more details about classes near you. I thought I would walk through a diag on a car that, I guess this sounds like I'm trying to save face or put myself over. I really don't mean it that way. It's just looking at it going, after I figured it out, like I could have really gotten worked on this car. So the subject is a 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee. I don't even know what engine's in it, to be honest, because mostly I don't care. This came from a collision shop with the concern of, after repair, the blind spot warning and the parking aid warning messages and lights are all on. And of course, none of it works. So the first thing you do is verify the concern. And I mean, it's obvious that instrument cluster is lit up like a Christmas tree. Of course, you can see the messages flashing by. So connect the scan tool. In this case, I went aftermarket. Why? Because I got to level with you. For this vehicle, for fun, I used the Autel Ultra. I guess because I had a suspicion this would be network related, and it's got a topology that's very much like Y-Tech. Connected the scan tool, pulled codes, and without listing off all the DTC numbers, there's primarily a DT set for we'll just say the ADAS control module, and then also the parking aid module. The ADAS module had 5 DTCs, each one correlating. So they're basically open or short-circuit for all the radars on the vehicle. I'm torn about referring to these continuously as radar, even though that is exactly what they are. The first radar is, of course, the one kind of behind the grill area for adaptive cruise, automatic emergency braking, kind of the most common radar, or at least I think what most people think of when they think of radar. The next two, we'll just go to the back of the vehicle, are the blind spot radars, the blind spot modules, if you will. They're short or medium range, if you will, radar, where that front one for adaptive cruise is considered a long range radar. And then this has 2 more radar mounted in the front corners, if you will. And they would be more for of course, cross traffic, pedestrian avoidance. There's DTCs set, lack of communication, open or short circuit to all these radar set in the ADAS control module, if you will. The parking aid module had all similar DTCs, open, short circuit to all the parking aid or ultrasonic sensors in the rear bumper. This vehicle was hit in the passenger rear. The amount of damage was they had to replace, of course, the bumper skin, the bumper itself, if you will, the metal portion, the harnesses. They did not replace the radar themselves or the blind spot modules, if you will. They also replaced the rear hatch, and it looked great. I got to level with you, I'm not trying to stick up for them or anything. It looked good. So I don't know about you, but my initial thought is blown fuse. Do they fuse all the rear or all the radar, if you will, with one fuse? Do they fuse all the ultrasonics in the back with one fuse? I don't know. I didn't know, but that's in the back of my head. There is really a fuse going back to the ADAS control module. Didn't seem reasonable that it would be blown. And turns out this module is really, really easy to access by popping out the kind of, I don't know what you would call it, the the rear floor cover, if you will, where years ago they might have had a spare. And now it's just a compartment just behind the rear seats. This is a longer wheelbase Jeep, so there's a fair bit of room back there. But on the passenger side, when you get that stuff out of your way, get the tray out of the way, it's really accessible. And you can back probe the power feed and ground and realize that they are both good. So now it's kind of like, is this going to end up being a wiring issue? And if you pull up a wiring schematic and even just like connector view type stuff, you realize that the radar, all 5 of them, act somewhat like modules that are on a private network or private CAN going to the ADAS control module. It's dedicated, but they're not crisscross, if that makes sense. CAN high is not shared amongst all of them, as far as I could see. And CAN low is not shared amongst all of them, as far as I could see. It looks like they're very much dedicated. What would take them all down? So you're thinking wiring, like Collision Tech just accidentally missed a crushed spot in the wire harness. And that's what I'm thinking. And I'm focused on that right or passenger rear corner. And I ask them if they'll remove the bumper for me. And that's where I start spending time. I don't go quite so far as to start opening up the harness, but I'm looking at it and it doesn't look hit. I'm trying to manipulate it a little bit, see if I can get something to happen, hear a dinging, see if I can get DTCs to go away, refresh them. It's not really happening. And so I check for power feed and ground at the blind spot modules. And they got power feed and ground. But an interesting thing to me that I backburnered was that the wire color did not match the wiring schematic. And in this case, in a way, experience starts working against you. Because it's nothing new to have wiring schematics not match up. And you stop caring so much about the wire colors and more about the pin positions. And that could have cost me, especially if I wasn't testing, I guess, really both sides. If I had really focused in on that passenger side, if I'd have been just sold on the issue had to be over there, I could have lost a lot of time. So it's really just because the bumper was removed, the bumper skin, exposing the wiring, exposing connectors, the connectors being relatively easy to access. It became easy. And really what ended up happening is I'm looking for a green with red wire. That's the power wire at the passenger rear. And yet the passenger rear, I had kind of like a tan with red. Again, the power was in the right pin. So I got to level with you. Didn't think a whole heck of a lot about it. I've had wiring schematics that were wrong. I've had OE wiring schematics that are wrong. It just didn't matter. The ground was in the right spot. Power was in the right spot. All right. Then I went to the driver's side. And I found that interesting because now I'm supposed to be looking for brown with red, or it might have even, honestly, I didn't look up the legend. Maybe I should have, especially if we're going to talk about it on a podcast. It's beige with red. It was a really light tan wire, but it was green with red. And that became interesting, right? And some of you maybe have run into this, especially if you're mobile guys doing work for collision shops, or you have a shop that works on a lot of work for collision shops. But it's kind of like, oh, wait a minute here. Call them up. It's like, hey, did this harness get replaced? And they had to call me back. And honestly, yes, I suppose you could looked at it and said, it looks pretty clean. Everything looked really clean on this vehicle. Like even the stuff that wasn't replaced looked really clean on this vehicle. But anyways, they call back and they indeed did replace this harness. And what they had accidentally done is flip-flopped it. So you have either end, I would say on either end, either corner, a bulkhead connector. And they turn out to be exactly the same. So the harness was, if you will, 180 degrees off. Right side was plugged into the left and the left plugged into the right. So undid the whole harness, unplugged all the ultrasonics and the radar. And I'm not trying to blow anything out of proportion about how difficult this was. It wasn't. Everything was out in the open. Flip-flop the harness, plug it all back in, and all the codes go away except for two. Two DTCs come back for the radars, for the blind spot modules, if you will, left and right. And it did occur to me a little bit, or the thought at least crossed my mind, that this thing got smashed pretty good, especially in the right side. What the chances are that radar, or really both, took a pretty good impact and rendered them disabled or, broken. It was really easy to slide them out of their slots, and the radars themselves were flip-flopped as well. And looking at them, as best I could tell, there's really no way to tell which one was which. So again, didn't dive into this. They might have been the exact same module, if you will. It's just when they get programmed, you tell them what they are, or because of where they are located in the wiring to them, they end up programmed the way they need to be for left or right. So putting them in the correct positions caused all the DTCs to go away. Yeah, bolted it all back together with help. I am not a body tech. NAPA Autotech training sessions are being conducted day and night in a town near you. This training caters to every level within your organization, be it a mechanical assistant, a mechanical specialist, a technology specialist, or a driver safety calibration specialist. Imagine a one-stop shop training partner in NAPA Autotech that will lead your team to a path to greatness. Autotech's entry-level Build-A-Tech classes convert the untapped potential of your new hires into money-making mechanical specialists. Autotech's higher-level tech update classes introduce specialists to the world of ever-changing technologies, which prevents your shop from getting technologically stagnant. Remember, if you're not moving forward, you're falling behind. And, turning to the front of the store, the Autotech Service Advisor class is an awesome way to hone your client advocate skill set, ultimately benefiting the customer through an improved vehicle repair experience. But it doesn't stop there. Imagine an electric vehicle class that takes your specialist well past the mundane, yet necessary safety topics. Well, it's here. Autotech's EV Ready training is a week-long curriculum that takes participants through a hands-on experience involving hybrids and electric vehicles. The session kicks off with the use of PPE and proper tooling while touching on required OSHA regulations. Then, the students dive into the lab vehicles to gain knowledge of the common high-voltage components on EV and hybrid vehicles and their function. Attendees will be taken on a path exposing them to different electric vehicle manufacturers to compare component form and location. Additionally, information about Level 1 and Level 2 charging systems will be included, along with a quick look at DC to DC charging. The operation and maintenance of subsystems are explored, including the different modes of Tesla operations, and so much more. So what are you waiting for? Commit to taking your business to the next level with NAPA Autotech training. The reason I thought it was interesting is that a lot of times you get in these discussions on what separates good techs from, or a good tech to a better tech to an even better tech, or especially when it comes to diag. And, you could say knowledge level and memory and maybe a process, procedure, documentation, training, so many things, natural intelligence and problem solving and critical thinking and all these things. And they're true. They're not outright, wrong or false. But what I've noticed with the techs I think of as being elite is they might go down rabbit holes, but they don't stay down them very long, if that makes sense. Meaning they will start in a direction and things aren't clicking, things aren't making sense, and they bail. They, put a pin in it, or they back burner it, an idea or a direction they're going. They back up and go in a different direction. And this, one of the big reasons I would say I wanted to talk about this is because I caught myself being really, really focused on that right or passenger rear area, because that's where it got hit. If you do this stuff, you've seen harnesses get crushed, or you don't see the outside of the harness looking disturbed, but then when you start opening it up, you see all the damage. And no, there really wasn't much visual aid, if you will, or nothing that would pop out at you looking at it externally that there's anything wrong. And, I suspect the big reason for that is the size of the wires nowadays. We've gone very small gauge wire for good reason. Weight. They're not carrying a lot of electrical load. They don't need to be that big. They don't need to be a very high gauge, if you will, or I guess low gauge, really, technically. They don't have to be. It takes less to wreck them. It takes less to break them, especially inside insulation where there's really not that many strands, and the strands are small, and they get pressure in the right area and a little bit of pull, and it's enough to break them. And yet the outside split loom doesn't really look like it got squished. So we've seen this. I've seen this. I think it's important that recognizing the wire colors don't match up. I don't think you want to spend a terrible amount of time when everything else lines up, but it's hard to say how much time to spend, if you will. Like, how much time do I want to invest to see if the wiring diagram is wrong? What is the resource? If this was a aftermarket redrawn wiring schematic, the probabilities of them being wrong go up. Is this copy of OE in an aftermarket where it's possible that the original diagram from the manufacturer was wrong, but they haven't updated it yet? They don't know to update it. If we don't give feedback, we don't report issues, they don't know to go seek an update, find out if there's been either a bulletin or not a bulletin. The OE just updated theirs and didn't say anything to anybody, which now the OE diagrams on their website, the latest, you expect to be the most accurate. And I'm not kidding you, you will find where they're wrong. I don't want to blow that out of proportion either, that they're always wrong. It's just, it happens. Yeah, I think initially seeing the wiring, specifically that power wire. And then, of course, now that we know what's wrong, if I would have checked the private can, I'm guessing they would have either been flip-flopped or located incorrectly. And that would have been a clue all at that one connector. But like I said, once that bumper cover's off and you really have to take the whole bumper skin off, it's all exposed. It's really easy to get to. Pop the shells, if you will, over the wires as they come to the connector. You got the wiring colors right there. And now it just becomes evident what the issue is and what you have to at least try to see what happens. Moral of the story, I think, is awareness. Can you catch yourself getting too invested in an idea? I think maybe a really bad example would be if you have a fair bit of experience on GM V8s with misfires, that you can get pretty focused on lifters or camshaft damage, and to the point of ignoring other things, other clues of what might be going on, and just getting so focused on this is probably the issue. I've seen this before. It behaves just like it. And really ignoring data that would conflict with that, down the rabbit hole you go. And in this case, I think I could have very well spent a lot of time focused on wiring damage on the right side. I could have started, got my razor out, started opening up the split loom, tracing wires, tugging on wires, all because an idea and experience starting to work against me. And before I start opening up that harness, before I get overly invested, can I pump the brakes? Can I back up? And can I go, how much attention should I give this? And then what would be the quickest way to determine if this is really something to worry about? And because that bumper skin's off, the other side was exposed, easy to get to, and it really sped up the diagnosis. that is my technical story. And I guess before I sign off here, the other idea is, it just popped in my head and probably should have been the first one to pop in my head, is there's really no worse things. And not that this was such a horrible, diag, and then just took so long and took such high level understanding, nothing of the sort, but man-made problems can be the most difficult to try to track down. They brutalize you. And I feel like this one could have. It really, really could have. If I let it sounds like I have a lot more control than I probably really do. Some of it was just following my gut a little bit, going, this doesn't make sense. I don't like this. And then going in a little bit different direction. Not a terrible amount, but a little bit. So yeah, when somebody has been in there already, be it another tech, collision tech, do it yourself, or somebody's uncle who used to be a mechanic, a lot of times you got to have your eyes open, maybe just a little extra hesitancy about chasing, just a little bit. Don't be scared, of course, but just have your hand on the brake a little bit. Maybe pull up a little bit on the parking brake a little and slow down. Sometimes you got to slow down to speed up. One of the great pieces of advice I got from a really good friend, Aaron Keppen. He said that once, and it's never, ever left me. I think about it and repeat it often. I just don't credit him for it. That is how I will leave you. Thank you very much for listening. And thank you for the emails. It almost feels lazy sometimes doing the mailbags, but there's really good questions in there. So that might be doing that again soon. If you have ideas for episodes, want to be on the podcast, have questions you'd like me to try to answer, please don't hesitate to send an email to mattfonslowpodcast@gmail.com. And before we go, if we could take a second to thank our sponsor, NAPA Autotech Training, and also thank the Aftermarket Radio Network. And just remember, restomp that groin. Right, Jeff? Until next time, take care.
You've been listening to Matt Fonslow, diagnosing the aftermarket A to Z on the Aftermarket Radio Network. Follow Matt on your favorite listening app. He's very interested in what you have to say. Let him know what you'd like him to cover and come on the show. Matt is all for advancing the aftermarket. Find Matt Fonslow on social media and connect or on aftermarketradionetwork.com.